park was quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the empty benches and silent paths. The city was busy, full of lights, bustling people, and the endless hum of life. Yet, in the middle of it all, the dog park was an island of peace, a place where animals could roam freely and play under the watchful eyes of their owners. It was here, on one of those peaceful nights, that Officer Mike Anderson first saw the puppy. At first, he thought it was just another stray, wandering through the park, sniffing at the grass, or perhaps hoping for scraps of food from people leaving the nearby cafe. He had seen his fair share of abandoned animals over the years, so he wasn't overly concerned. But as he walked through the park on his nightly patrol, he noticed something odd. The puppy, a small, scruffy creature with matted fur and sad, large eyes, wasn't playing. It wasn't sniffing around looking for food either. No, this puppy had made a small nest of leaves and twigs under one of the benches. It was curled up tightly, its little body trembling slightly in the cool night air, as if it had grown accustomed to the chill. Officer Anderson, who had been a cop for over a decade, recognized the puppy's behavior immediately. This wasn't a stray who had wandered into the park by accident. This was a dog who had nowhere else to go. The sight tugged at something deep in his chest. He walked over slowly, crouching down to the puppy's level. The little dog didn't flinch. It didn't run away or even look up. It simply lay there, exhausted, with a quiet, weary expression that spoke volumes about the pain and hardship it had likely endured. Officer Anderson gently extended his hand, hoping to coax the puppy into trusting him. To his surprise, the dog didn't back away. Instead, it cautiously sniffed his fingers, then looked up at him with eyes full of sadness. Officer Anderson's heart clenched as the tiny dog took a small step toward him. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't just leave this puppy out here alone, vulnerable, with no one to take care of it. He carefully scooped the pup into his arms, holding it close, and walked back to his patrol car. "Hey, buddy," he muttered softly to the puppy. "Let's get you some help." As he drove to the local animal shelter, Officer Anderson couldn't stop thinking about the puppy. How had it ended up here? Who would abandon such a sweet little creature in a park, left to fend for itself? The thought made his blood boil. The shelter staff immediately took the puppy in, giving it food and water, as well as a thorough checkup. The little dog was malnourished, covered in flea bites, and its fur was tangled and filthy. But despite its poor condition, there was something in its eyes, an undeniable spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. As the days passed, Officer Anderson continued to check on the puppy. He visited the shelter regularly, bringing treats and toys, trying to bond with the little animal. He found that the dog had a gentle, kind nature. It didn't bark aggressively or cower in fear. Instead, it was quiet, reserved, but deeply affectionate, always seeking attention and showing gratitude for for the smallest gestures of kindness. Officer Anderson named the puppy Scout. The name seemed fitting, as the little dog seemed to be constantly searching, looking for something or someone, as if it was on a journey to find its place in the world. After a week of visits, Officer Anderson's heart was set. He couldn't bear the thought of Scout being left behind again, of living in a shelter or being passed from home to home. He decided to adopt the puppy. It was a decision he made with no hesitation. The moment Scout was placed in his arms, it was as if everything clicked. The little dog settled into his chest, nuzzling into his uniform, as if it had found the home it had been searching for all along. Over the next few weeks, Scout and Officer Anderson developed an unbreakable bond. The puppy became his shadow, following him around the house, curling up by his feet while he watched TV, and even accompanying him on patrols when he wasn't on duty. The dog quickly became a familiar face in the neighborhood, known for its friendly demeanor and unwavering loyalty. But what struck Officer Anderson the most was the way Scout would react when they passed by the dog park where they had first met. Every time they drove past, Scout would stand on his hind legs in the back seat, his nose pressed against the window, staring out at the park with an expression of longing. It was as though the puppy was remembering something, as if it hadn't quite forgotten the nights spent alone, huddled on the cold ground beneath the bench. One evening, Officer Anderson decided to take Scout back to the dog park, hoping that the visit might bring some closure. As they arrived, Scout's ears perked up, and he jumped out of the car, running straight to the very bench where he had spent those cold, lonely nights. He sniffed around, circling it for a moment, then stopped, as if he had found what he was looking for. He sat down at the base of the bench, his eyes scanning the area as if he was waiting for someone. Officer Anderson watched from a distance, his heart aching at the sight. He knew Scout would never forget the hardship he had endured, but he also knew that the puppy had found love and security now, a family who would always take care of him. As the sun set over the park, Officer Anderson approached Scout, crouching down next to him. He placed a gentle hand on Scout's back, feeling the warmth of the dog's body beneath his fingers. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he whispered. And as Scout looked up at him, his eyes shining with gratitude and love, Officer Anderson knew that he had made the right decision. The bond they shared was one that would last a lifetime, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the world. Just as he was about to leave, Officer Anderson heard a voice behind him. A man standing near the edge of the park was watching them with tears in his eyes. I never thought I'd see him again," the man said, his voice trembling. Officer Anderson turned around, his heart sinking. The man slowly walked forward, kneeling beside Scout, who immediately ran over to him, wagging his tail furiously. "He was my puppy," the man said, his eyes brimming with tears. "I had to leave him behind. I couldn't take care of him anymore, but I've never stopped thinking about him. The realization hit Officer Anderson hard. Scout had once belonged to someone who had failed him, and yet, despite everything, the puppy had never lost his ability to love, never lost his hope. As the man cried, begging Scout for forgiveness, Officer Anderson stood silently, watching the profound scene unfold. He had seen a lot in his career, but nothing had ever affected him like this. The puppy, who had once been abandoned and forgotten, was now a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of the incredible power of second chances. Officer Anderson turned and walked away, his heart heavy but full, knowing that this puppy, this small, courageous creature, had found the love and security it deserved. And as he walked, he smiled, knowing that Scout would never have to sleep in a dog park again. After that powerful and emotional encounter, Officer Anderson couldn't help but reflect on the path Scout had taken to get here. He couldn't stop thinking about the puppy's past, the pain, the loneliness, and the abandonment. But what truly broke his heart was how easily Scout had forgiven everything, the warmth and joy he now radiated when he was around Officer Anderson. And their family was enough to make anyone believe in second chances, the power of love, and the healing nature of time. The next few weeks were filled with discovery and growth for both Officer Anderson and Scout. It was a time when both their worlds intertwined even further. Scout, though still cautious at times, began to settle into his new life more than ever. He was no longer just a dog with a sad story. He was a member of the family. He slept beside Officer Anderson every night, his head resting gently on the officer's feet as if he was guarding him, just as Officer Anderson had once guarded the streets. And then there were the walks. Scout loved to explore the park they frequented every morning. He would trot happily along the trails, sniffing at the familiar flowers and bushes, as if the park were now a part of him. Officer Anderson could tell that Scout was growing stronger, both physically and emotionally. But despite the joy that came with their shared days, there was a lingering thought at the back of Officer Anderson's mind. The man who had shown up in the park that evening, crying over Scout's abandonment. What had become of him? What had prompted him to leave his dog behind? And why, after so long, had he returned to the park, seeking redemption in the form of a second chance with a dog he had once forgotten? A few days later, Officer Anderson made a decision. He would go to the park once again, not just to walk Scout, but to find out more about the man who had once been Scout's owner. He knew that the man had been deeply remorseful, and part of him believed that perhaps there was still a chance for closure, for healing, not just for Scout, but for the man as well. As they approached the park, Scout immediately perked up in the back seat of the patrol car. He seemed to recognize the place, his ears pricking up, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings. Officer Anderson smiled at the sight. He could tell the puppy felt a strange sense of comfort in the park, even though it was the place where so many painful memories had once been. When they arrived, the park was quiet, save for the rustling of the trees in the gentle breeze. There were a few people out walking their dogs, but no one seemed to be paying much attention to the pair of them. Officer Anderson wandered toward the same bench where Scout had been found weeks ago. He stood there for a moment, reflecting on how far they had come. Just a few weeks ago, this puppy had been alone, abandoned, and cold, and now he was here happy, safe, and loved. It was then that Officer Anderson saw the man again. He was standing near the edge of the park, as though he was waiting for something or someone. Officer Anderson recognized him immediately. The man had the same tear-filled eyes, the same heavy expression from their first meeting. He was still looking down at the ground, as though trying to gather the courage to approach. Scout, on the other hand, had already spotted him. Without hesitation, the little dog jumped out of the car, running excitedly toward the man. He barked happily, his tail wagging furiously, as if he had never been abandoned at all. The man knelt down, his hands trembling as Scout rushed into his arms. For a moment, they simply stood there together, the man cradling the dog, his face buried in the puppy's fur, as though he was trying to make up for lost time. Officer Anderson stood at a distance, watching the scene unfold with a mix of emotions. Part of him felt an overwhelming sense of joy. Scout had found his way back to the man who had once been his owner, but another part of him, one that had seen far too much pain in his years on the job, couldn't help but wonder if the man truly deserved the second chance. After all, he had abandoned Scout once. Could he be trusted again? As if sensing the officer's thoughts, the man turned his gaze toward him. His eyes were red from crying, his face a mixture of sorrow and shame. He approached Officer Anderson slowly, Scout still in his arms. "I know I don't deserve this," the man began, his voice cracking. "But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt him. I never wanted to abandon him. I was struggling, lost in my own mess. I just couldn't take care of him anymore. But not a day went by that I didn't think about him." He paused, looking down at Scout, who was nuzzling the man's neck affectionately. I'm not asking for you to forgive me. I just wanted to see him one more time. I wanted to apologize, to let him know that I love him." Officer Anderson felt his heart soften. He could see the sincerity in the man's eyes, the genuine remorse that reflected back in his voice. Scout had already forgiven him, that was clear. But forgiveness wasn't always that simple. The officer hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You've done your part," Officer Anderson said quietly. "You've come back, and you've apologized. But now, it's time for Scout to decide. He's the one who has to make the choice." The man nodded, understanding the weight of the officer's words. "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And whatever happens, I'll accept it. I just want him to be happy." For a long while, they stood there, watching Scout as the puppy played in the park, chasing after a ball that one of the other dogs had dropped. The man and Officer Anderson exchanged a glance. Neither spoke for a while. It was as if they both knew that this was Scout's moment, his time to choose the life he wanted, whether with his old owner or the new one who had already shown him so much love. And then, after what felt like an eternity, Scout ran toward Officer Anderson. The puppy stopped in front of him, looking up with his big, brown eyes, and then sat down at his feet, as if asking the officer to give him permission. Without a second thought, Officer Anderson knelt down and picked him up, holding him close. Scout wagged his tail happily, nuzzling his face against the officer's chest. The man watched, a single tear falling down his cheek. He knew in that moment that Scout had found his home not with him, but with the man who had saved him when he was at his lowest. With a final, heart-wrenching look, the man turned and walked away, leaving the park behind. And though his heart was heavy, Officer Anderson knew it was the right choice. He had seen the transformation in Scout, the way the puppy had come to trust, love, and thrive. The officer would be the one to care for him now, to give him the life he deserved, a life filled with safety, love, and adventure. As Officer Anderson held Scout in his arms, his thoughts wandered back to that moment when he first saw the puppy in the park. It felt like a lifetime ago, when the dog had been alone, abandoned, and vulnerable. But now, as he looked down at Scout, the small puppy's trusting eyes staring up at him, the officer knew that the little creature had changed him in ways he never thought possible. Scout had taught him about forgiveness, resilience, and the undeniable power of love. With Scout nestled safely in his arms, Officer Anderson turned back toward the car. It was a peaceful moment, one of those rare instances in life when everything seemed to fall into place. He could feel the warmth of the puppy's little body against his chest. And for the first time in a long while, Officer Anderson felt a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about protecting the streets anymore. It was about protecting Scout, about making sure that the little dog would never know what it was like to be abandoned again. As they drove back to the house, the soft hum of the engine in the background, the officer couldn't help but notice how peaceful the world around him seemed. It was a quiet morning, with just the right amount of sunlight filtering through the trees. The streets were empty, save for a few early risers on their way to work. Scout sat contentedly in his lap, his tail swishing back and forth, as if he were already beginning to see this new life as his own. It was a gentle reminder of how far both of them had come. They were no longer strangers, no longer two souls lost in the vastness of the world. They were family now. When they arrived home, Scout immediately darted out of the car, his little legs carrying him quickly to the front door. Officer Anderson laughed, watching as the puppy ran in circles around the yard, the excitement in his eyes making it clear that this was a place where he truly belonged. The house had become a sanctuary, a safe haven for Scout, a place where he could explore, play, and simply be a dog. It was a far cry from the cold, lonely nights he had spent in the park, but it was the life he deserved. As the days turned into weeks, Scout grew stronger. His once frail body was now filled with energy and life. He had a routine now, a walk every morning, a nap in the afternoon, and playtime in the evenings. And in the evenings, after dinner, Scout would curl up next to Officer Anderson, who would read the news or relax with a cup of tea. They were inseparable. Scout had found a family that loved him, a family that would never turn their back on him again. But there was still a piece of the puzzle that lingered in Officer Anderson's mind. Despite everything, he couldn't shake the memory of the man who had once been Scout's owner. Had he truly changed? Could he be trusted? And if he ever came back, what would they do? A week later, Officer Anderson received a call. It was from the same man who had once abandoned Scout. The officer's heart sank as he listened to the voice on the other end of the line, the man explaining that he had been going through a difficult time and had never meant to hurt Scout. He said that he had been trying to get his life together and wanted to know if he could see the dog again. Officer Anderson listened in silence, his thoughts racing. He understood the man's struggles. He had been there too, but the question still lingered. Could he forgive the man for what he had done to Scout? Could he let go of the hurt, the feelings of betrayal? It was a difficult decision, but one thing was certain. Scout had found his place, his home, and Officer Anderson was determined to protect that at all costs. "I'll bring him by the park," Officer Anderson said quietly, his voice steady. "But this time, things are different. Scout is no longer a stray. He's part of my family now." The man on the other end of the line didn't say anything at first, but Officer Anderson could hear the emotion in his voice. "Thank you," the man whispered. "I just want to see him, to apologize in person." The following morning, Officer Anderson drove to the park, Scout sitting on the passenger seat, his tail wagging in anticipation. Scout seemed to remember the park, his ears perked up, his eyes wide with excitement. The officer couldn't help but smile at the sight. Scout was a different dog, now confident, happy, and full of life. When they arrived at the park, the man was already there, standing by the bench where Scout had once slept. He looked different, thinner, more worn, but there was a gentleness in his expression, a deep sorrow that spoke of the regret he had carried for so long. Scout immediately ran toward the man, barking happily. The man's eyes filled with tears as he knelt down to embrace the dog, holding him close. Officer Anderson watched from a distance, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He wasn't sure what he expected to happen, but seeing the reunion unfold before him felt surreal. It was as if time had come full circle, as if the past had been forgiven and forgotten. After a few minutes, the man stood up, holding Scout gently in his arms. He turned to Officer Anderson, his face full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never deserved this, but I'll never forget what you've done for him. You've given him a life, a real life." Officer Anderson nodded, his eyes focused on Scout. The puppy had his tail wagging furiously, licking the man's face as if to say, "It's okay. I'm happy now." The officer turned to walk away, his heart heavy with a sense of peace. It had been a long road for both Scout and the man, but now it seemed that they were both on a better path. And as he walked toward the car with Scout by his side, Officer Anderson realized something important. Some stories didn't have easy answers. Some people couldn't be saved. But others, like Scout, could find redemption in the most unexpected of places. And in the end, love and forgiveness were what mattered most.